part of our project, we decided to interview random people and ask them if they would prefer a date with a individual who's hard to get or easy to get, and why.
I think an easy to get person is more attractive because they show all their qualities in the beginning, and if you're drawn to them, then you know what you're in for.
I think a woman that's hard to get is more preferable because of the challenge of trying to please her and the challenge of playing to get to know her better.
Some people don't like to be challenged too much, so they'll go after the person that's more easier to get to. And in another way, it kind of move faster. And a person that's hard to get, it's a turn on for some people because, it's like, oh, this is exciting. Like, I've never had this kind of challenge. This person is playing hard to get, and I can't get them, but I got to have them type stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm going to go more after that person than I'm going to go after someone who's just easy. Like, because it's like, if I get that person, it's an accomplishment for me. You know what I mean?
I think just initial thoughts, I would prefer someone somewhat hard to get, because that means that I need to look for their character and really find it and see it and chase after it and watch them over a long time. And then the same with me. They don't want to just accept me right off. They need to know my character. They need to know my track record. And then at that point, once we get to know, then you got it.
I would definitely say hard to get. I would say easy to be friends with, but hard to get in a relationship, because I don't want someone who is just freely giving of themselves to everyone else. I want them to be specific for me, and I want to find those hidden treasures in them. And if they're always giving them away, then that's too easy to get. So I want to find those hidden treasures, so I want it to be harder.
Actually, I could look at both sides of that, but I'm going to say easy. And the reason I say that, because when I met my husband, it was love at first sight.
I think that a girl being hard to get would be more desirable, because they probably would have to be like more attractive and have people to choose from, so they're able to select people out.
So I think a date that is harder to get is more desirable, because I think the chase is kind of half of the challenge. And something that's too easy, right? If it's too good to be true, then it probably is.
Okay, I think a date that's actually harder to get is more desirable. For one, if it's for, the guy asking the girl, the harder it is, and for him to get her to go on that date. For me, it's a good sign, because for one, she's not easy, and for two, I think she's going to be a little more mature in the relationship, and things of that nature.
I prefer somebody who's a little bit more difficult to get, and here's the reason why. Part of the reason why I prefer someone that pushes back just a little bit is because that person has a little bit of conviction. They don't always fall for everything, and sometimes maybe the pretty face and a pretty smile is not really what drives them. It's really that comes from the heart. And in my opinion, people who are worth more than the average to me would be somebody who really speaks from the heart and has convictions about what they feel.
Probably hard to get, because if it's easy to get, you know that it's going to happen, but if it's hard to get, you have to develop that relationship in order for it to work, so there's more to go from.
Okay, in my opinion, a date that is easy to get is more preferable. In my personality, I would rather be with somebody who is really looking forward to being with me than somebody that I've got to work for, or that forbidden fruit, or that hard to achieve thing that you finally conquer. I'm not in as much to that as much as somebody who's just interested for me.
Hi, my name is Mandy Simpson, and I'm going to be talking to you about the Playing Hard to Get experiment on human attraction. This experiment was conducted by Elaine Wolster, William Wolster, Jane Pavilion, and Lynn Schmidt in 1971. These experiments set out to understand and possibly explain the common folklore that a hard-to-get woman is more desirable in a partner than an easy-to-get woman. This folklore is suggested by Socrates, Terence, the Kama Sutra, and Dear Abby, and it was also noted that those whose attraction is easily won is unlikely to inspire passion in another. To get started, this team of experimenters began by accepting the cultural lore. They set out to demonstrate that a person values a hard-to-get date over an easy-to-get date. They then interviewed male college students and asked them why they preferred a hard-to-get woman. The college men explained that a hard-to-get woman is almost inevitably a valuable woman who could afford to be choosy if she is popular. She might be popular on the grounds of being pretty, sexy, having a good personality. The hard-to-get woman was also offering a challenge to these men, which they thought was attractive. The easy-to-get woman, on the other hand, was considered undesirable and risky. According to the men, she is probably desperate for a date, she might make too many demands, and she might want to get serious right away. A few of the men interviewed disagreed with the general consensus. Those who did said that the hard-to-get woman might not only be hard to get, but she might also be impossible to get and come across as cold. The woman who's easy to get might be so because she's friendly, outgoing, and would boost a man's ego. The opinions of these men, however, were originally ignored. There were a few psychological theories that these experimenters believed that supported their hypothesis. First was the dissonance theory, which predicts that if a person expends a lot of energy and effort to attain a goal, that person is usually appreciative of that goal. This means that a man who spends a lot of time and energy pursuing a woman and trying to win her affections is usually going to be appreciative of those affections. Next, there's the learning theory, which says that frustration may increase drive, which means that being frustrated by pursuing a woman who's hard to get might increase the drive to win her, and that elusiveness and value may be associated because of experience through social interaction. This means that the connection between a hard-to-get woman being valuable might be something that's learned through these men's social interaction. In an extension of the sectarian theory, Walser argued that two components are necessary before an individual can feel passionate love. He must be psychologically aroused by the individual, and the setting must let him conclude that his feelings are due to love. A woman who is hard to get might inspire these unique passions. Although there seemed to be plenty of psychological evidence to back their theory, the first 5 experiments designed to demonstrate that individuals desire a hard-to-get date more than they desire an easy-to-get date all failed. Without going into too much detail about the failed experiments, I can tell you kind of why they failed. 2 of the experiments failed to demonstrate that the outside observer perceived a hard-to-get individual as being especially valuable. 3 of the experiments failed to demonstrate that the suitor perceived a hard-to-get date as being especially valuable. After all 5 experiments had failed to confirm the hard-to-get hypothesis, the playing hard-to-get experimenters decided to re-interview students, this time without assuming the cultural lore to be accurate. They asked men what the advantages and disadvantages were to dating the hard-to-get and the easy-to-get woman. They found that choosing between the 2 types of women was difficult because each woman was uniquely desirable and uniquely frightening. The elusive woman was a popular and a prestigious date, but according to these men, she could not be enthusiastic about her suitor. She had the potential to humiliate him, and she might come off as unfriendly and cold and holding inflexible standards. The accessible woman, on the other hand, might boost a man's ego and make a date relaxing and enjoyable. However, the men referred to her as possibly being easy to get and hard to get rid of, having a tendency to get serious too quickly, being oversexed or over-affectionate in public, and possibly embarrassing the men in front of their peers. In the previous experiments, the benefits and drawbacks of these 2 women had eventually generally balanced out. Because both women were considered well-liked, when any difference in liking did present itself, it tended to favor the easy-to-get woman. The experimenters determined that there are 2 factors that were important in determining how much a man likes a woman. The first is how hard or or easy is she for him to get? And the second is, how hard or easy is she for others to get? After realizing that in a scenario where there are only two options, the hard to get woman and the easy to get woman, everything eventually balances out. The experimenters began to examine other possible configurations until they found a type of woman they thought would go beyond the limitations facing the easy to get and the hard to get woman. If a woman is reputed for being hard to get, but for some reason is easy for the suitor to get, she should be the most appealing. Because she is hard for others to get, dating her would be a great prestige. But if she is easy for the subject to get, dating her would be relaxed and enjoyable. The experimenters called this woman the selectively hard to get woman. The selectively hard to get woman possesses all of the assets of both women while also avoiding their liabilities. Armed with this new type of woman, experimenters constructed a new hypothesis. The selectively hard to get woman will be especially liked by her date. Women who are hard to get, easy to get, or whom the subject has no information will be liked to a lesser amount. With this new hypothesis, the team of experimenters designed a new experiment called Experiment 6. My partner Josh is now going to explain to you Experiment 6 and its outcomes.
Now, every person agreed that hard-to-get women were more desirable. It appeared to be impossible to prove it through a battery of experiments. These failed experiments led to an examination of the experiment as a whole and an alteration of the hypothesis. As Mandy explained, if the woman is hard to get, then she may seem to carry the liabilities of being cold and standoffish, which could embarrass the suitor and thus naturally becoming less desirable to him. The liabilities of an easy-to-get woman may counter the coldness with a warm, friendly attitude, but may also come off as desperate or clingy, and again, naturally making her less desirable. Now, a person can seem desirable if they are in fact hard to get, but show great interest in the specific person that is trying to court them. The 6th experiment does just that. It portrays an individual as hard to get for everyone but the single person who shows interest, in hopes that this will finally solve the elusive hard-to-get attraction theory. Here's how the experiment was set up. 71 male students from the University of Wisconsin were assigned to an experiment over their summer break. They were told that they would be examining how well a computer could match them with dates using compatibility technology, or if random assignment was just as effective. In reality, the experimenters were going to test the attraction levels of 5 different women and portray them in a way that created a uniformly hard-to-get woman, a uniformly easy-to-get woman, a selectively hard-to-get woman, and 2 women who were unknowns that served as a control group. The men were called in so they could examine the 5 folders and rate the women. Each woman's background information was similar to try and limit other variables that might affect the outcome of the experiment based on what their interests were or height, weight, picture-wise. The men were told that 3 of the women had already come in and rated their own 5 possible dates, and the men could see those scores before creating their own. The other 2 women had no information other than their picture and background information. The scales that the women used to rate the other men and the subject was on a scale of -10 to +10, indicating their desire for a date with the individual. One woman listed all men, including the subject, as highly desirable and scored them between a 7 and a 9, and was considered uniformly easy to get. One woman selected all the men with little interest for a date, including the subject, and scored them between a 1 and a 2, and was considered uniformly hard to get. The last woman showed little interest in the other men and scored them between 2 and 3, but very high interest in the subject himself, which she scored him an 8 or better, and was considered selectively hard to get. The subject was then asked to fill out a questionnaire giving his opinions on each of the women. The first 2 questions identified the likeliness of him enjoying one of the various states. The next 10 questions expressed the subject's opinions on the assets and the liabilities ascribed to the various dates. The final 6 questions indicated the liabilities attributed to each woman, seeking to see if the easy-to-get or hard-to-get women were considered to be liable to somehow mess up a date or a relationship. The prediction was that the selectively hard to get woman would be the most desirable, followed by the uniformly hard to get and easy to get women, and then the two control groups or the unknown women. When these results came in, the selectively hard to get women dramatically outscored all the other categories when it came to picking the most desirable to go on a date with. The other 4 categories only slightly differed. Selectively hard women had men pick them 42 times. Uniformly hard to get 6 times, uniformly easy to get only 5 times, and one control woman 11 times and the other 7. When the questionnaires were examined, the results further backed the new hypothesis. The uniformly hard to get woman was likely to have the assets of being selective and popular, but the liabilities of being unfriendly, cold, and rigid. The uniformly easy to get woman was likely to have the assets of being friendly, warm, and flexible, but had the liabilities of being unpopular and lacking in selectivity. The selective woman was supposed to be ranked with only assets and with no liabilities. Each of these predictions was proven to be true. As far as the anticipated problem on the dates, it was proven that uniformly easy to get and uniformly hard to get women raised concerns on dates that they may be embarrassing or not show enough interest in the subject, and that the selective women did not have any of these concerns, and she only had all the assets and lacked all liabilities. Another data table used statistics and to identify rates that the men's would react to the specific categories. When it came to men's liking of a date, selectively hard to get scored a 9.41, the hard to get scored a 7.9, the easy to get scored an 8.53, and the no information group scored an 8.58. The statistics also analyzed the evaluation of women's assets and liabilities. In the category of selective, the selective women scored a 5.23, hard to get scored a 4.39, easy to get scored a 2.85, and the no information group scored a 4.30. In the popularity category, selective women scored a 4.83, along with the no information group, followed by the hard to get with a 4.8 and the easy to get with a 4.65. In the category of friendliness, selective women scored a 5.58, hard to get scored a 4.07, easy to get scored a 5.52, and the control scored a 4.37. In the category of warm, selective women had a 5.51, hard to get had a 4.51, easy to get had a 4.99, and the control had 4.79. The final category in the attributes section was easygoing, with selective women scoring a 4.83, hard to get scoring a 4.42, easy to get 4.82, and the control group a 4.61. So if those numbers weren't confusing enough, what you can see is the selectively hard to get women outmatched all other groups in the not only desire for a date, but also in every single asset category. One last statistic that was ran, and it was the amount of problems that the subjects expected while in a date, with the highest number meaning there were very few problems they expected to encounter, and a low number indicating that a lot of problems were expected when they went on these dates. The selective women scored the highest with a 5.23, followed by the no information or control group with a 4.99, then the hard to get group with a 4.86, and lastly the easy to get group with a 4.77, just proving that the easy to get group versus the hard to get group had more liabilities that were a bigger issue to the actual men as far as clinginess and wanting to rush in a relationship versus that coldness, or maybe they'd stand them up on a date. So in conclusion, the experiment proved that a woman can intensify her desirability if she acquires a reputation of being hard to get, and then by her behavior makes it clear to a select romantic partner that she is attracted to him. Both Mandy and myself thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.